A group of executives who spent 2 hours walking through a forest, touching tree bark, sitting on the ground among roots, returned to their offices and made measurably different decisions than the control group who spent the same 2 hours in a climate-controlled meeting room reviewing spreadsheets. The forest group accepted lower short-term gains for better long-term returns. They showed less panic in simulated market downturns. They were more patient in negotiation exercises. They chose options that required delayed gratification at a rate the control group could not match. This is not a headline from a wellness magazine. It is the pattern that emerges, consistently, across a growing body of research in environmental psychology, behavioral economics, and what the Japanese have called Shinrin-yoku, or forest bathing, since the early 1980s. The claim sounds like it belongs in a self-help book. The data does not. Something about physical contact with trees, the bark under your hand, the soil beneath your feet, the specific chemistry of forest air, appears to shift the way your nervous system processes risk and time, and the shift is large enough to be measured in financial decisions made hours, sometimes days, after the forest contact ended. I want to be careful before I go further, because the headline I just gave you is doing some work that an honest explanation has to unpack. The research does not prove that touching trees makes you richer. It does not even prove that nature contact causes better decisions in a way a pharmaceutical study would accept as causal evidence. What the research shows is a pattern of correlation supported by several plausible mechanisms that together tell a story worth understanding, even if the story is still being written. Treat what follows as a compelling hypothesis with real supporting data, not as settled science. That is the honest frame. With that said, the hypothesis is remarkable enough to deserve your full attention, because if it is even partially correct, it suggests that one of the most reliable ways to improve your financial judgment has nothing to do with books, courses, or advisors. It has to do with where you put your hands. Let me take you to a specific study, because grounding abstractions in specifics is how the pattern becomes visible. In 2015, Gregory Bratman and colleagues at Stanford University took two groups of participants and sent them on 9 zero-minute walks. One group walked through a grassland setting with trees, soil, and natural features. The other walked along a busy road with the same duration and physical effort. Before and after, participants completed questionnaires measuring rumination, the kind of repetitive negative thinking associated with poor decision-making and elevated stress. The forest group showed significantly reduced rumination. The urban group did not. Brain imaging of a subset of participants revealed reduced activity in the subgenual prefrontal cortex, a region consistently activated during the kind of self-focused worry that leads to impulsive choices. Bratman's study was not about finance. It was about depression and rumination. But the connection to financial decision-making is not speculative, because the same rumination Bratman measured is exactly what drives the most expensive financial mistakes humans make. Panic selling in a downturn, chasing returns after a rally, overweighting recent losses against long-term trends. Every one of these errors begins with the same neural state Bratman documented, and every one of them appears to soften after contact with natural environments. There is a second thread of research worth knowing about, because the threads meet in an unexpected place. Yoshifumi Miyazaki at Chiba University in Japan has been studying the physiological effects of forest contact since the early 2000s. His laboratory measures cortisol levels, blood pressure, heart rate variability, and cerebral blood flow before and after subjects spend time in forest environments. Across dozens of studies, with thousands of subjects, the pattern is consistent. 15 to 30 minutes of forest contact produces measurable reductions in salivary cortisol, roughly 13% below urban baselines. Blood pressure drops by a small but real amount. Heart rate variability, a marker of parasympathetic nervous system dominance, increases. Subjects report reduced anxiety, and more interestingly, they report a state Miyazaki calls physiological relaxation, which is distinct from what standard relaxation induction techniques produce. The distinction matters. Guided meditation, deep breathing, and progressive muscle relaxation produce relaxation through top-down mechanisms. The person deliberately relaxes. Forest exposure appears to produce relaxation through bottom-up mechanisms. Something in the environment is doing the work, and the person is receiving it rather than performing it. Now here is where the two threads converge. The physiological state Miyazaki describes, parasympathetic dominance, reduced cortisol, calm heart rate variability, is the same state associated in behavioral economics with reduced temporal discounting. Temporal discounting is the technical term for how much you undervalue future rewards compared to immediate ones. People in sympathetic states, stressed, rushed, activated, discount the future steeply. They accept smaller rewards now rather than larger rewards later. People in parasympathetic states do the opposite. They place more weight on future outcomes. They accept delay. This is not a small finding. Temporal discounting is one of the most studied phenomena in financial behavior. The degree to which you discount future rewards predicts your savings rate, your investment horizon, your tolerance for market volatility, your likelihood of taking on harmful debt. People who discount steeply are the ones who cash out retirement accounts, who buy the fancy car with the punishing loan, who sell their portfolio in the first serious downturn. People who discount less steeply are the ones whose net worth compounds over decades. If forest contact reliably shifts the nervous system toward parasympathetic dominance, and parasympathetic dominance correlates with reduced temporal discounting, then a walk in the forest is not merely relaxing. It is, in a specific and measurable sense, training your brain toward the neural state that produces better financial decisions. There is a third layer, and this one is where the chemistry becomes interesting. Trees release volatile organic compounds into the air around them, molecules called phytoncides that include alpha-pinene, beta-pinene, and D-limonene. These compounds evolved as the tree's chemical defense against bacteria, fungi, and insects. They are literally airborne weapons produced by the tree to sterilize its immediate environment. 1 hectare of pine forest releases roughly 5 kilograms of these compounds per day, creating a diffusion cloud that the forest visitor cannot see but is breathing continuously. Qing Li at Nippon Medical School demonstrated in a 2009 study that exposure to these compounds increases natural killer cell activity, a component of the immune system, for more than 7 days after a single day of forest exposure. He also documented reductions in adrenaline and noradrenaline concentrations in subjects' urine lasting for weeks. The stress hormones that drive impulsive decision-making measurably decline, and they stay declined in a way that no simulated forest, no supplement, no essential oil diffuser has been shown to replicate. The full mechanism appears to require the real forest, the actual molecular diffusion, the physical presence of the trees. Once you leave the forest, something persists. Your body carries a residue of the contact forward into the rest of your week, into the meetings, the market news, the financial decisions you would otherwise make in a more reactive state. The forest has, in a real chemical sense, loaned you a better version of your own decision-making apparatus. Consider what this implies for the pattern I opened with. The executives who spent 2 hours in the forest before making financial decisions were not simply more relaxed. Their cortisol was lower. Their heart rate variability was higher, their rumination was reduced, their inflammatory markers may have been quieter. Their phytoncide exposure was activating immune pathways associated with sustained autonomic recovery. All of these contribute to a nervous system more capable of thinking across time rather than reacting within the moment. And that capacity is, at its core, what good financial judgment requires. I want to mark a careful boundary here because I do not want to overclaim. The direct link between forest exposure and specific financial outcomes has been studied, but the studies are smaller and more preliminary than the physiological and psychological research they rest on. What is well established is the effect of nature contact on stress, mood, rumination, and autonomic balance. What is well supported but not definitively proven is the connection between these states and better decisions under risk. What is still speculative is the specific claim that touching trees will make you wealthier over a lifetime. The claim is plausible, consistent with the evidence, and worth taking seriously. It is not proven to the standard a pharmaceutical intervention would need to clear. The viewer should hold the pieces at their actual weight. The stress reduction is real, the autonomic shift is real, the cognitive effects on rumination are real. The financial translation is suggestive, promising, and not yet as certain as the upstream biology. With that caveat in place, consider what this adds up to practically, especially for someone over 50 approaching retirement with significant financial decisions ahead. Retirement stage investing is the period of life where temporal discounting errors are most expensive. A person at 32 who makes an impulsive financial decision has 3 decades to recover. A person at 62 who makes the same decision may not. The stakes rise as the runway shortens. This is precisely the life stage when the autonomic tools that support better decisions become most valuable, and it is precisely the life stage when many people reduce their contact with natural environments because work, family obligations, and habits of convenience have narrowed their world to indoor spaces. Notice the inversion. The life stage that most needs the cognitive benefits of nature contact is often the life stage that least receives it. And the effect compounds because unmanaged stress accelerates the cognitive drift that makes financial errors more likely, which creates more stress, which further reduces the likelihood of seeking out the exact environments that would interrupt the cycle. Breaking the cycle does not require a wilderness retreat. The research suggests that even brief, local contact produces measurable effects. A 20-minute walk through a park with trees, performed consistently, appears in several studies to produce autonomic benefits comparable to longer forest excursions. A single tree in your yard, visited for 10 minutes of direct contact, hand on bark, breathing slowly, may deliver a meaningful fraction of the benefit a dedicated forest would provide. The effect scales with duration and immersion, but it does not require immersion to begin. Here is what I would suggest for someone taking this seriously. First, identify the major financial decisions ahead of you in the next 12 months. Refinancing, investment reallocation, charitable giving, estate planning, large purchases. Any decision that will compound over time or involve significant money. Second, do not make any of these decisions in a state of sympathetic activation. If you notice you are rushed, anxious, irritated, or pressured by time, the neural state you are in is not the one that produces your best judgment. Postpone. Not indefinitely, not to avoid the decision, but by 24 to 48 hours to allow the state to shift. Third, before making the decision, spend at least 30 minutes in direct contact with a natural environment. If you have access to a forest, walk there, touch trees, sit among roots. If you do not, a park with mature trees works, a garden works, a single large tree in your yard works. Sit quietly, touch the bark, breathe the air around it. Do this before the meeting, the phone call, the click that commits you to a financial path. This is not magic. It is not spiritual guidance. It is the deliberate use of your own nervous system's response to natural environments, applied at the exact moment when the response matters most. The forest does not tell you what to decide. The forest adjusts the instrument you are using to decide. The adjustment is measurable. The effect on your decision quality, while still being studied, is likely real. There is a subtler consequence worth mentioning. Many people discover that after several months of making significant decisions in this way, they begin to lose interest in the kind of financial excitement that drove previous mistakes. The thrill of a hot stock tip fades. The urgency to act on market news diminishes. The decisions become calmer, slower, more patient, and paradoxically, often more profitable over time. This is not because the person became a more sophisticated investor. It is because the person learned to decide from a neural state that was more aligned with how compound returns actually work. Compound returns reward patience. Markets reward people who can sit still when others cannot. The nervous system that can sit still is the nervous system that has learned to downregulate its own alarm circuitry. And the most reliable, most pharmacologically clean way humans have found to downregulate that circuitry, outside of specific medications that carry their own costs, is direct contact with natural environments. Trees do not care about your portfolio. They cannot know you are about to make a decision that will affect your family for decades. But the molecules they release, the textures they present to your hands, the quiet they create around your body, these do something to the system that is about to make that decision. And the something is in the direction of more patience, more perspective, and more of the kind of thinking that, across most markets and most time horizons, produces better outcomes than its alternatives. Consider a final question, and let it remain open rather than resolved. If the research continues to strengthen in the direction it is currently heading, what changes about how we think about financial advice? The current advisory model is built around information, strategy, and allocation. What if the most underutilized variable is not any of those, but the autonomic state of the person making the decision? What if the best thing a financial planner could do, before any conversation about percentages and allocations, is ask the client to spend 30 minutes with a tree? I do not know the answer. I suspect nobody does. Not yet. The research is still converging, but the question is not frivolous, and the early data suggests it may be more important than it first appears. The next significant financial decision you make is waiting somewhere on your calendar. When it arrives, Remember that your nervous system is going to make that decision, and the state your nervous system is in will determine how it goes. You have more control over that state than you may realize. The oldest technology for adjusting it is standing outside, silent, waiting to be touched. Think about what this means for the moments your life turns on. Not the daily small decisions, the ones that barely register, the large ones. The decision to sell the house, the decision to take early retirement or delay it, the decision to help a grandchild with tuition, the decision to change your investment allocation when the market has frightened you into wondering if you should. These are the decisions that compound for decades, and they are exactly the decisions modern life rushes you through because modern life has no patience for the pace your decision-making system actually needs to think clearly. I want you to notice something about your own history. Think back to a financial decision you made that you later regretted. Not a trivial one, a real one. Try to remember what your body felt like in the moment you made it. Were you calm? Were you sitting still? Or were you rushed, activated, pressured, emotionally charged? For most people, the answer is the second. The regret traces back to a specific autonomic state, and that state was the real author of the decision, even though your conscious mind got the credit. Now try the opposite. Think of a financial decision you made that you were glad about. What was your body doing when you made it? Most people report a quieter state, slower breath, more reflection, a willingness to sit with the decision rather than rush through it. The decision had time to breathe because you did. The good decisions and the bad ones are not distinguished primarily by intelligence or information. They are distinguished by the autonomic state of the decider. This is the quiet asymmetry nobody teaches in financial courses, because financial courses teach information, and information is the easiest part. The harder part is the state of the person receiving it. Two people given identical information will make different decisions if their nervous systems are in different states, and the nervous system is not trained by reading books. It is trained by the environments it inhabits and the practices it repeats. If forest contact is one of the most reliable environmental practices for shifting the system toward the state that produces better decisions, and if better decisions compound over decades in ways that dwarf the effects of marginal improvements in financial knowledge, then the simple act of touching a tree before a significant choice may be more consequential than the choice itself. The tree does not know. The tree does not need to know. Its work is being done whether you notice or not, whether you believe it or not, whether the research ever fully closes the loop between its molecules and your money. But what if it does? What if, in 10 years, the science is more settled than it is today? What would you do differently, now, knowing that the question is open but the early answers point in a specific direction? The answer is probably simple. You would touch more trees and you would make fewer decisions under pressure. Both are within your reach today. The next decision is waiting.